everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll be sharing with all of you my favorites from the month of August, and I'll be creating this look with all of my favorite makeup products from the month. So if you're interested in seeing what products I've been loving and how I created today's look, then just stick around. So to start off, my face is completely bare at the moment. So let's go in with my favorite base product over the past month, which is the Chantecaille Just Skin Moisturizer, which is a tinted moisturizer with SPF 15. And this is in the shade Glow. And you can see here that this has a really nice, thick moisturizer texture. And I'm not sure if this video is going up first or my video review of this product. So in case you haven't seen that video, basically that video features my first impression of this product. And so I tried to really build up this product in that video. I put on 3 entire layers, which is way too much. So today I'm just putting on 1 layer. And what I found with this product is it's not really the best if you want to have anything more than light coverage. So definitely use this on days when you just want a little bit of skin tint and you want to rely on your concealer to provide any additional coverage. In that video, I did manage to build this up to more of a medium consistency by layering on a lot of layers. But I wouldn't recommend it because it definitely felt a little bit greasy, a little bit thick on my face. This product is definitely better on days when you just want some sheer coverage. As you could see from me putting it on right now, it really just feels like you're putting on an additional layer of moisturizer or sunscreen. And so I usually just use my fingers with this product. It's super easy to blend in and it feels really nice on the skin. So as you can see here, this added some nice glow and just a little bit of coverage to my skin. Nothing too intense. You can definitely still see some of my blemishes here. So I'll cover that up later with some concealer. I would say that compared to my favorite Cosmetics Daydream Cushion skin tint, this one is more so a skin tint I go for on days when I want something just super easy. So if I'm just going to work or seeing some friends, then I think this is a really great way to go. The Cosmetics skin tint is one I would go for though on days when I want a little bit more coverage, a little bit more perfection to the skin, or if I have a long day and I don't want my skin to look too dewy. Also, the shade Glow is not exactly a match for my skin tone. It's a little bit too deep and warm. So when I was applying it, it probably looked totally fine, but it does oxidize a bit after you apply it. And so just be aware of that if you buy this product and you have a similar skin tone to me. Maybe go one step down to one of the shades that's a little bit more neutral and a little bit lighter. I'm sticking with this one just because since I tried this out, I can't return it and get a new shade. And since it's so sheer, I think it's fine. But if I really love this product, I might get one in a different shade for the winter time. So now for concealer, I'm just gonna go in with my Pat McGrath concealer in LM10. This is obviously not a new product for me. I use this all the time. But I've been really loving pairing this with the Chantecaille just because this provides a pretty hefty amount of coverage, whereas the Chantecaille is really light. So I'm just gonna blend this out with my soft concealer brush from Sonia G's Fusion set. And I love using this brush with this concealer just because since it is pretty high coverage, this helps to just sheer it out a little bit and make sure I concentrate this on my problem areas. I'm also just gonna sweep this over my eyes because recently I've been enjoying just using concealer instead of primer on my eyes. So I don't have any new brow products for the month, so I'm just gonna go in with my Huda Beauty Balm Brows and my Cosmetics Brow Cream, which are my current favorite brow products. So here are the finished brows, and I also just went in with my Dior Backstage Powder No Powder in the shade 3N. And this has been my favorite powder now for a while on days when I wanna have a nice glowy, dewy complexion, but still wanna just set my base product. So now let's go into my other favorite for this month, which is the Chantecaille Bronzer in the shade Goa. So my first video review of this product, I wasn't sure how I felt about the undertones of this. So it is a little bit on the reddish plummy side, but after I filmed that video, as I looked at my makeup over the course of the day, I felt that this really melded well into my skin, and over time it actually looked really nice and natural. So I actually really enjoy this shade, even though it's a little bit different from the other shades I typically go for in bronzer. So I don't know if you guys can see just based on this face swatch over here, but it is just a little bit on the cooler side in comparison to what I normally go for. But I think this looks really beautiful over time. Also, I just really love this bronzer formula. It's so nice and buildable. So one thing I mentioned in my review of this product is that I first heard of this actually from Michelle Wong, who has much lighter skin than me. And so when I first bought this, I wasn't sure if it would work for my skin tone, but actually, I think this is a bronzer that is sufficiently buildable that it works for a pretty wide variety of skin tones. So I'm actually using a pretty heavy hand today and a fairly dense brush. So this is my Wayne Goss number 12 brush. I think that if you have a much lighter complexion than me, then you can just be a little bit more careful in your application and maybe use a fluffier brush. So now that my face is nicely bronzed, let's go into blush. The Patrick Ta Monochrome Moment Velvet Blush in the shade She's Seductive. So here we have the blush, and you can see it's just a really nice flush, especially on days when you have a cooler toned look. So now the moment I'm sure you guys anticipated. So of course, my favorite eyeshadow of the month of August was the Pat McGrath Huetopian Dream Mothership 9 palette. So that's this beauty over here. And in my first two looks, I really wanted to show you guys as many shades as possible. So in today's look, I'm gonna make it a little bit more simple, slightly more everyday, just to see how much I can stretch this palette. So starting off with Shockwave on my Wayne Goss number 16 brush, I'm gonna sweep this all over the crease area. And this is definitely one of my favorite shades in this palette. It's just so vibrant and fun. I feel like you could do a really cute and vibrant look that's super simple by just having the shade in the crease like this and then putting the Skin Show shade all over the lids. I'm not gonna go quite that simple today, just because if you guys know me, I do love slightly more intricate looks, but I do think this shade really lends itself to just kind of stand on its own. This is also a really gorgeous blush. So now just to add some more depth, I'm gonna go into Extreme Plum Noir with my Wayne Goss number 19 brush and just concentrate this on the outer part of my lid. And I'm not gonna go too heavy-handed with this shade today because I want this look to overall be pretty light, but just to have a little bit of definition in the outer corner. And if you guys saw my previous videos, this is definitely a shade you can build up to get a surprising amount of depth considering how light it looks in pan. But it's definitely a lot lighter than her typical deepest matte shades. So I'd say that is one downside of this palette in comparison to her other palettes. If you're someone who likes to have a bit more dimension in your looks, or if you have a deeper skin tone. So the next favorite that I have for this month is actually this giant bottle of Mehron mixing liquid. So I think getting this or the Intensifies wand that Pat McGrath just came out with is really helpful if you want to see the full extent or potential of her Blitz Astral shades. Those shades typically just look like glitter toppers if you use them dry, but with this, they become really beautiful molten metallic shades. So today I'm just gonna pour a little bit into this plate over here. And I wanna experiment with a new technique of trying to use mixing liquid. So usually I take a brush and brush the mixing liquid on my lid, and then I add the shadow on top of that, either with a finger or a brush. But for today's application, I want a bit more of a smooth and slightly sheer application of the shadow. So I'm actually gonna go in with a finger first into Astral Venusian Orchid. So I've picked up this much on my finger. And then I'm actually going to dip this in the plate into the liquid and just kind of swirl it around to see if we can sort of dilute it a little bit while getting some of that mixing liquid. And then I'm just gonna sweep this over my lid and see what kind of effect we can get. Ooh, okay, that's really pretty. Okay, I think this is a decent technique if you either don't have a lot of brushes or you wanna save yourself from cleaning some brushes. Alrighty, so taking some more of that, I'm going on the other lid. Got a little bit of fallout there. Alrighty, so I know I said that I wanted a sheer application, but the shade was just so pretty, I kept building and building, and here we are. So not quite the look that I originally envisioned, but this shade is just so gorgeous. So just to clean up the edges, I'm going back into my Wayne Goss number 19 brush and that extreme plum noir shade. And I'm just gonna use this to soften the edges. And now for the lower lash line with my soft definer brush, I'm gonna start out with Shockwave and just sweep this all over the lower lash line. And you can see I have a decent amount of glitter fallout on my cheek over here, but it's okay. I don't mind a low glitter. And then with that same brush, I'm gonna just add some depth with the extreme plum noir shade. And then taking my builder brush, I'm going back into this extremely flaky shade. I'm gonna try to pack a decent amount of this onto my brush. Then I'm gonna dip this in mixing liquid and just put this on the inner third of my lower lash line. Hopefully the mixing liquid just helps everything to adhere. Ooh, nice. Definitely would have been a complete glitter bomb without that mixing liquid. So here we have the eyeshadow look with liner. And just to finish this off, I'm gonna go in with my Sonia G Mini Booster into the Skin Show shade and use this for inner corner highlight and also to highlight the brow bone. As I mentioned in my reviews for this palette, this Skin Show shade is a bit more intense in comparison to her previous ones. It has a bit more luminosity and opacity. So here we have the completed eye look. What do you guys think? So in terms of my month end impression of this palette, overall I really love this palette and it will definitely be pretty highly ranked in my next Pat McGrath rankings video. This palette is quite different than a lot of her more recent palettes in that she did introduce a lot of new formulations in this palette. And overall, it's just a lot more extra, I would say, than Divine Rose 1 and 2. This is a perfect palette to dip into if you're someone who likes really multidimensional looks and wants to center a look around just one high impact shadow. This is not, however, the best palette to go into if either you don't really want very sparkly shades or you want sparkly shades, but you want to really be able to add layers to your look in a lot of different shades. So personally, I'm more in the latter camp. I like using a lot of eyeshadows, really making a pretty multi-dimensional look by layering things, by adding different shades in different parts of my eyes. I find though, if you do that with this palette, you end up with something that is a little bit too much. It doesn't really cohere as a look. So I think the best way to do looks with this palette is just to pick one shade you really want to focus on. So either one of these four or one of these two metallic shades, and then just build the look around that. Just have that all over the lid and then have some mattes in your crease. Don't try to be using a bunch of the special effects shades in any given look. Also, if you get this palette, I would highly recommend either getting mixing liquid or the Intensifies wand, just because otherwise you probably will get a lot of glitter fallout. And so that's something just to make note of and to think about in terms of your own personal style of applying makeup. If you're not someone who really likes working with glittery shades, if you're not really looking for that kind of look, then you might just find that this palette is really high maintenance and is not really suitable for the kind of everyday looks that you want to go for. I would say my other favorite Pat McGrath palettes, Divine Rose 1 and 2 plus Subliminal, are better at kind of spanning the gamut from everyday looks to much more glam looks that are all really easy to create with dry shadows. That said, of course, this is a really beautiful palette to look into and will give you just more intense special effects than any of Pat McGrath's previous palettes, which is saying a lot. So to finish off the cheeks, I do want to add a little bit more of a rosy hue. So I'm actually going to go in with my Surratt blush in the shade Rougère. And I'm going to use this fluffy brush from Wayne Goss. So this is not necessarily a favorite for this month, but just a shade to kind of tie this look together with the eyeshadow. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of that Skin Show shade on the cheekbones as well as a highlighter. And on my lips today, I have Spirited Away from Lisa Eldridge. And this has definitely been one of my favorites for the month of August, July, June, basically ever since I got this. So this is not necessarily unique to this month, but I think this goes really well with today's look. This formula is just really smooth and hydrating on the lips. It gives a subtle sheen, but not as juicy as a lip gloss. So I find this really perfect just for everyday wear. Two other favorites I did want to mention though are these two lip products here. So first off, we have the Kosas Sport Hyaluronic Lip Balm in the shade Rush. So this is a really nice, hydrating, everyday lip balm in a pretty rose berry shade. And so I've been really loving just using this on an everyday basis. It has a really nice, energizing, minty flavor to it, and it feels really lovely on the lips. So this is not something, of course, if you're going for a more pigmented lip look, but this has for me just the perfect level of pigment for an everyday basis in a really comfortable formula. For something more pigmented though, I've been really loving this lune+aster lip gloss in the shade President. So you can see here, this is a much more pigmented lip gloss and also has a lot of sheen to it. This has a really yummy birthday cake flavor to it, and it feels really nice and luxurious on the lips. It's really nourishing and it's not too thick, it's not gloopy or sticky. It has a really nice slip to it, and it also just provides that opacity. So on days when I want something that looks kind of like a lipstick but is a lot more comfortable, I've been going for this guy. So the final favorite I wanted to talk about for the month of August is the Quintessence palette from the Temptalia Sydney Grace collab. So that's this beautiful galaxy themed palette. So this is the palette that I was most unsure about when I was buying the entire set of Sydney Grace Temptalia palettes. This is not the typical color story that I gravitate to. It's a very dark palette and it's for a really smoky look with a lot of greens and blues. That said, this palette has really inspired me to step out of my comfort zone, and two of my favorite looks recently that I've done were using this palette. So one was a turquoise inspired look, primarily using these shades over here. And I just loved that look so much. It was overall pretty monochromatic, but it had so much dimension and glam to it. And then another look that I really loved was focusing on this shade Aurora and then integrating some of the green and blue elements from this palette. So where this palette really excels in comparison to the other Temptalia Sydney Grace palettes is that this one has the most special effects. So it has the most dual chromes and really high impact shades. So I've really been loving the looks that I've created with this palette, and overall I've been really surprised and pleased by it. And now that I've been using the three palettes from this collection from several months, I think I can give you guys my overall rundown and recommendations. When I first saw these palettes, I assumed that On the Horizon would be number one, followed by Radiant Reflection, followed by Quintessence in terms of how much I would like them. So I've really been surprised that my final ranking for these three palettes is actually in a completely different order. So the way I would rank the palettes based on my personal preferences are Radiant Reflection as number one, Quintessence as number two, and On the Horizon as number three. It really though comes down to your personal preferences. So Radiant Reflection is excellent if you want a really colorful palette that has really vibrant shades and has really nice multi-dimensional shimmers. Quintessence is excellent if you want slightly darker, more smoky looks that have more dual chromes, more special effects to them. And then On the Horizon is great if you want a little bit more of a neutral toned, more grungy, more understated type of look. One thing that I would recommend though is if you are around my skin tone or any deeper, definitely pick up the deep versions of the palettes rather than the light. So I think one reason On the Horizon is ranked third for me is because that's the only one that I got in the light color story. And what I found with Sydney Grace shadows is the mattes are incredibly easy to blend. Probably the easiest to blend mattes that I have ever tried. That said, it does take a little bit more effort to build up these mattes than to blend them out. And so even though in the deep versions of these palettes, so take this palette over here, having this as your lightest shade might seem kind of intimidating because this looks pretty deep in pan, but because they blend out so easily, this becomes a really easy to use transition shade. And so I think it's better to pick the deeper palettes and then blend out the shades to be lighter rather than pick up the light one and try to build build up the shades because that can be a lot more difficult to get payoff. Overall though, I've been really impressed with these palettes. They've really sparked my interest in indie brands, and I actually have an upcoming video dedicated to Terra Moons. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely let me know in the comment section below, and also subscribe so you can be notified when that video comes out. So that's it for today's video. If you guys like this video, then please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!